Um, we lost each other there for a minute, and I'm now used to it. I don't panic when this happens on Instagram. We're going to try that again. Invite.
There we go.
Ah, perfect. Is that better? I
Yay.
can hear you now.
Awesome. Can you see me?
Can you? I can't see you yet. Is your
I can,
video on?
yeah, I can see you.
Oh, then we can start. We can start.
Okay, sure.
Everybody else, can they hear us? And can you see Carrie and I, or can you hear us at least? Maybe one person will.
Give a
Uh-huh.
thumbs up.
Yeah. Can you hear?
Just leave it. It's good.
Give it a few minutes. Okay, well, we can start. I suppose somebody will say, if they can't hear me, they will say something. So,
Okay.
hi, this is Harriet from Harriet's Botanicals, and thank you for joining our live. As we've stated before, we love bringing you information. We love educating you. We love sharing the knowledge that we have with you around women's health, around reproductive health, also around men's health for other products that we offer. As you know, our flagship product, Arorwit, has done really well for hormonal imbalance. We talk about estrogen all the time, and I think most people think estrogen is not a good thing. So we're joined by Carrie Light. Carrie's an amazing person. I mean, the internet is amazing because I met her
Yeah.
on Facebook and I started following all the wonderful modules that she's putting out there. And I was very interested in how she spoke about hormones, specifically estrogen, progesterone, insulin, all the others. And we will actually tackle those in other lives. Carrie is an amazing person because she's 60, but looking, like she could be 18. She's just so
Oh, yeah.
beautiful out there. And I love the fact that she's completely taking control of her health and her wellness and what her body looks like and what she's eating. And she can talk us through her postmenopausal stage or, after 50. Well, I call menopause 50, though it's not 50, it can be 52. And then she can also talk us through the fact that she's been in the fitness industry for 40 years and in that time has gleaned and gained a lot of knowledge. So perhaps, Carrie, what you can do is introduce yourself, give us a little bit about your background and how you came into this wellness space.
Well, again, my name is Carrie Light, and it's really exciting to be here. I just love the fact that I'm talking to East Africa, to Nairobi.
Oh,
It's
wonderful,
really, it's super
wonderful.
awesome. Yeah, I mean, what can I say? I have literally been in the health and wellness business, fitness business all my life. Probably started in the industry at the age of 17. As I went to school, to college, and did all my certification courses. I just worked in the industry and fell in love with helping people. I love people, and obviously in this industry, you get to work with a lot of people and you get to do a lot of education. Through all of this, my mom was my huge inspiration. She also was in the fitness industry until the age of 74, and then she was diagnosed with Alzheimer's, which was very devastating to me because she is very near and dear to my heart and was an extremely incredible role model and had to get this devastating disease. And through all of my travels and through my job working with people in the industry, and then when I lost my mom, I thought, I really feel that it's necessary to develop a program to educate women on their health after the age of 50, even earlier than that, because when we think about going through perimenopause into menopause into postmenopause, it can start as early as 35 and it can last for 10 years. So, we need to be thinking of our hormones earlier than we do later. It's truly important for us to move through perimenopause into menopause into postmenopause feeling good about ourselves. So I developed this 12-week program on health, just trying to educate women to know that it's never too late we can always be the best we can be at any age. It is so important to know that. I think a lot of people think, you
Okay,
know,
okay. So I suppose we can dive deep into estrogen, because, you know, when I was on your course and I heard that, you know, estrogen has up to 400 functions in the body. So maybe we can talk a little bit about how estrogen functions like at puberty, and how it functions at the peak of your fertility, and then how it functions at perimenopause and then menopause. I think it's good for people to understand that estrogen is not always bad. You see, we go at puberty, estrogen is bad. I'm estrogen dominant, I've got fibroids, I've got this is going on for me. Oh, I've got infertility, I'm over bleeding. And then now at perimenopause, we're told, no, estrogen is good. Estrogen is dropping. And now you've got joint pain. You've got all kinds of things. You can't sleep. You've got insomnia. You know,
Mhm.
even your heart is getting affected. So maybe we can first just, you know, talk about what estrogen, its role, and how it works.
Well, estrogen, I like to say, is more like gold than anything else. It is, again, it's the primary regulator of the female body. Bottom line, it plays 400 roles in our body. And as we move through, again, our high fertility life, where we're, again, we're having children, and our estrogen levels are doing what they're most likely are supposed to be doing, really depending on, again, what you're eating and what you are doing in your life, because estrogen can function much better if we are putting the right foods in our mouth. Food plays a big role in estrogen. But as we move through puberty into perimenopause, estrogen starts to, again, kind of fluctuate. And we rely on progesterone and estrogen to, they're a team. They're kind of like a dancing partner. They're like tango dancers. And if we start to see our progesterone go down, because that's generally the first thing that happens as we start to move into perimenopause, is our progesterone starts to drop. So as soon as our progesterone starts to drop, we start to see our estrogen fluctuate. And that starts to put all of these crazy symptoms in, where we start to see more metabolic issues. We used to gain weight in our breasts, our buttocks, and our hips. But as we see estrogen fluctuate, we see the weight gain go more into our midsection and our waist, due to the fact that the way estrogen is talking to insulin. And insulin is, again, our hormone that helps keep our glucose down. But as we move through perimenopause, our estrogen, when it fluctuates, it has a resistance to glucose, and we have more elevated insulin, putting us at higher levels of metabolic health. So we see more risks of type 2 diabetes because of this. We see more risks of heart disease, because estrogen is a big protector of all of these things. Like, it protects our blood vessels and all of our vascular system. So as soon as we have moved through perimenopause and into menopause, and we have lost 75 to 100% of our estrogen, then we are looking at less functioning of a lot of our systems, from our brain to our heart. We see, again, after menopause, they say that every 83 seconds, one person dies of cardiovascular disease in the United States. And that's
Okay.
that can be due to the loss of estrogen, because estrogen is such a protector. It's a protector of our neurons in our brain, and it keeps our glucose working well in our brain. And glucose is our number one energy source for our brain, which is really important. We don't
Okay.
tend to use glucose as well.
Okay, so
Yeah.
let's go back a little bit so we can just talk about, because I think this is new for so many people.
Yeah.
There's people who just think estrogen dominance is about fibroids.
Yeah.
You know,
No.
like, I have fibroids, I'm estrogen dominant. Let's go and
Mhm.
get an operation to get these fibroids out. So
Yeah.
I think it's very important for us to begin to understand that we need estrogen and why
Yeah.
we need it outside of fertility. Because some people
Mhm.
think all I need estrogen for is fertility, get a baby, and then, oh my God, these periods are so annoying. like
Yeah.
just get this thing away from me, get my
I think,
uterus out, right?
yeah, I think we
So,
all think that periods are annoying, but we just have to remember, you know, the role of estrogen and the importance of it.
okay. So talk a
So,
little bit more about this, the brain, the neurons. You talked about the brain, the
yeah, I'm
neurons.
gonna just pull up my little pictures here.
Okay.
So I'm gonna just bring up my little iPad and I'm gonna put it up to the camera. I'm just gonna bring up my
Okay.
brains. Okay. So I have a picture of three brains here. So as
Mm-hmm.
we move through perimenopause, this brain right here is our premenopausal brain. So this is before we hit menopause. And if you look at that brain, there are bright red all around that brain, just thriving neurons, really working well with the glucose. And then we take the second brain
Mm-hmm.
and we see that that's perimenopause. So we're in perimenopause. Now, if you look at that brain, the red around it has kind of diminished. We don't have as
Okay.
much red around that. So we see that the neurons are not as effective. And this is where we start to get a lot of brain fog and recognize that, again, estrogen is just. And then this is our postmenopausal brain where we see the red even diminish a little bit more because of the loss of estrogen and protecting those neurons in our brain. So it's really important to know that it is, again, a brain issue along with, it's not just our ovaries, right? It is so much more than our ovaries. I have just stated here on all of the effects that it has in our for brain issues. Like we have mood swings, loss of libido, we have hot flushes, insomnia, where it becomes a big struggle to sleep at night, and again, night sweats, even irregular periods. Depression, and all of these things are brain symptoms. They're, as I said, not coming from our ovaries. And I think that that's what a lot of women think, is it's just all about reproduction and losing that ability to reproduce again. But it's so much more. Estrogen plays a big role in our bone health. It is actually the signal that turns on our osteoblasts to create bone density and keep our bones strong. So we have higher risks of gaining osteoporosis because we lose that signal. Like most women lose at least 75% of their estrogen. I literally lost pretty well 100% of my estrogen when I went through menopause. And I am on bioidentical hormones now, which helped me a lot with my sleep, my brain fog, all of that. But there are so many other things you can do. But I'm going to let, I'm going to call you Harriet today. I'm going to let
Oh, that's
Harriet, if
fine.
you want to ask me other questions that
Yes.
so you can make sure that you're directing me in
We're
the right
covering
way.
everything. Well,
Yeah.
I like what you've spoken about. So somebody has asked anything for iron deficiency, brain fog. Unfortunately, she's out of Kenya. Maybe you can mention that a little bit later. Wambui, we will answer your question. So I'm now very clear that, okay, it affects the brain. That's why you have your depression, your mood swings, your insomnia. Then it then comes and affects your bone. It's like it's a signal. Estrogen is a signal for
Yes.
something in your bones. And when you
It's
don't
the
have it,
primary signal. Yeah.
okay,
And
okay,
it turns on what you call osteoblasts. So that's creating bone density. So as soon as we
okay,
see our estrogen diminish, we lose that. So our risk of osteoporosis goes up. So as we get to the age of 65, if we fall and fracture a hip, we literally have a 30% chance of dying within the first year of fracturing the hip. These are what stats have showed us. And that's
okay.
pretty scary because of the loss of estrogen. But there's a lot of things we can do to help maintain good bone density even after the loss of estrogen. But estrogen is, again, like gold
What
to a
happens?
lot.
Okay, okay.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit more about, so we've spoken about the brain, we've spoken about, so arthritis and osteoporosis. So if you can just educate me a little bit around the role of estrogen for things like because now after a certain age, everyone is like, my knees, my joints.
That's what
So
happens.
I thought it's to do with insulin resistance. As you're getting older, you're not processing all this, sugar or glucose that's in your joints, and they're
Exactly.
becoming hard. So
What
what's the
happens to
role
our
of
joints?
estrogen?
We don't produce as much lubrication in our joints anymore. So that synovial fluid doesn't become as abundant. So our joints they get much more sore, and we feel more aches and pains as we get older due to the loss of estrogen signaling for the lubrication. Because estrogen lubricates our joints, it lubricates our vagina, so we see more dry vagina, we see, more painful intercourse because of the atrophy of the vagina. We see, again, insulin resistance, where we see more weight gain. We gain 5 more pounds of fat every decade and lose 5 pounds of lean muscle tissue every decade. Now, these things, as I said, don't have to happen. But if we allow this because of what's happening with our estrogen to happen, then, things like the insulin resistance can happen, and we can become type 2 diabetic due to the insulin resistance, right?
Okay, so it's like as we're getting older, now that estrogen is dropping, even lifestyle diseases that we thought had nothing to do with us, that is how, because we're not preventing, or we're not sort of like bringing something else in place of that estrogen, or maintaining our body in a different way. Now we are at risk for all the metabolic issues. So let's talk about the heart, because we've talked about the bones, we've talked a little bit about the sugar, diabetes type 2, we've spoken about the brain. What happens around the heart comprehensively? I think everybody's scared of dying of a heart attack.
So estrogen protects the lining of our vessels, which is the endothelial lining, which is super important to avoid cardiovascular disease. And as soon as we see the drop of estrogen, we start to have problems with our blood vessels. And like I just said, we have way more cardiovascular issues. We see, 1 woman die every 83 seconds in the United States of cardiovascular disease after going through menopause due to the lack of estrogen. These things.
I think many women don't know this. I think so many women think that people who get a heart attack, or who are either overweight or don't care about their health, or they did something, or it's genetic. But it's interesting to realize that the drop of estrogen alone could mean that we're all high risk. And I suppose it means we could be high risk even if we're not overweight, right?
For sure.
As in, yeah. That's why you have thin people get a heart attack.
Yeah, exactly. That's a really, really good point. Exactly. If we look at men, they have estrogen also, but they don't lose estrogen like we do. And we are so much more well protected before we go through menopause because of the estrogen. We have way less issues with the heart and the brain and all of that due to the estrogen. But as soon as that estrogen drops, we are at a higher risk almost than men when it comes to our vascular system. We see things happen faster than it does in men due to the drop of estrogen. So it's
okay. So maybe can you list anything else like that we should be thinking about before we go into sort of solutions? What other functions should we be thinking of when we think of estrogen? Because the other day somebody said to me, after menopause, my eyes became dry.
Yes.
And I thought, why? Maybe we can list like 20 different other functions that we haven't spoken about here.
Okay, let me just pick up my little chart. Now, you have to remember with estrogen, when it talks about the functions, we're generally saying that it can be within that whole system. So estrogen hormones go to organs to support organs. So it can be, I'm just going to grab them and I think I have them. Okay, I'm pretty good at knowing them. So, so again, let's go back to the most important ones, the things that we see happen the most with women, or the highest risks are cardiovascular disease, Alzheimer's, strokes. We see higher rates of strokes, type 2 diabetes, cancer. We see, again, the symptoms of the libido, the hot flushes. We see symptoms of bone density, loss of lean muscle tissue, which is a big part of our metabolic health. Muscle is our #1 glucose disposal. It brings up that glucose so we don't see as much insulin resistance as we age. Again, we have less, it affects the brain, like I said, Alzheimer's. So we see a lot more neurological disorders happen, like Alzheimer's, Parkinson's disease, MS. These things are included. Also, we see, I'm trying to think of.
Well, those are a lot because you've mentioned MS, you've mentioned cancer. I'd love you to speak a little bit more about cancer. Alzheimer's, I'm now thinking, is to do with the neurons, that they're no longer protected.
Yeah, for sure.
So can you say something about cancer? Everybody wants to know how they can not get cancer or how it is linked to estrogen. Then at least you know.
Well, we just see it after we go through menopause and we lose the estrogen. We see more breast cancer in women, that's for sure. And again, just due to the loss of estrogen. But as I said, there's a lot of things we can do to protect ourselves due to the loss of estrogen, right?
Yes, maybe we can go into that. Like, what should we be doing? Tell us everything.
Okay, I'll tell you everything. So we'll talk a little bit about the neurons in the brain, because you did ask me, you know, what happens with the brain and why we are looking at Alzheimer's being more effective, because they say that for every man that gets Alzheimer's, there are 2 women that have Alzheimer's. And they are, again, sensing that is due to the lack of estrogen, because the neurons aren't as, again, they're not firing as much as they used to be. They don't have the proper nutrients that they used to do from the estrogen. We become more resistant with the estrogen, and we become more resistant with the insulin. Like I was saying, our brain doesn't use the glucose as well as it did before we started to see all of these estrogen changes. So, and what can we do about these things? We can do so many things. And it really comes down, first and foremost, is to what we're putting in our mouth. So nutrition is #1, because with all of the ultra processed foods out there that are literally killing everyone, that is the most important thing to remember, is to eliminate all of those ultra processed foods, which are the foods that come in bags and boxes with barcodes in them. They generally have 250 ingredients in them, and you can't understand any of them. Those are the foods we really want to try and avoid. We want to stay with our whole foods, like our vegetables and our fruits, our whole grains. If you're minimum, and as we age, we become more carbohydrate sensitive. So we have to pick and choose the right grains so we don't become, again, insulin resistant. And again, we want to focus on lean proteins. If you're eating dairy, you want to make sure it's, you know, coming from good fermented yogurts, eggs, stuff like that. And again, your nuts and seeds, your olive oils, your avocados, all of these things are helpful for building good phytoestrogens in our body. There are some great foods like your greens, your leafy greens are super important. They have great colors of the rainbow. We want to think of all of those colors from our vegetables and fruits. The darker colors, the better. And again, we want to think of dark chocolate like cocoa, high levels of cocoa. It's great with phytonutrients, phytoestrogens, helps our estrogen level.
So when you say dark chocolate, do you mean like chocolate bars you can buy at the supermarkets, or you're meaning a specific one?
No, there are chocolate bars, depending where you go. You can buy chocolate bars in the supermarket.
The organic ones.
The organic ones, and the ones that have at least 70+% of the cocoa
dark chocolate,
right? Yeah, the dark chocolate. So we definitely want the dark chocolate, not the milk, even though the milk chocolate's good.
It tastes good.
It tastes really good.
So we've covered nutrition. What you're really saying is that live a natural life. That's what I always say to people. You know,
So we
don't
got to take
overthink
care of our
it.
mind and our body. We really have to
Absolutely.
focus on moving more. Movement is the key to everything. I can't explain how much it is important to learn how to do some form of resistance training, because as we age, our metabolic system changes a lot because we lose lean muscle tissue. Like I was saying, after we go through, as we enter perimenopause into menopause, we tend to see a shift in what's going on with the distribution of our body fat to our lean mass. And our lean mass is our muscle. And when we go through perimenopause into menopause, as I said, we lose about 5 pounds of muscle and we replace that with 5 pounds of fat, which doesn't do our metabolic system any good. It doesn't help bring up our glucose because we're losing lean muscle tissue. We stop burning as many calories and we stop storing, and we start storing fat more, as I was saying, in the midsection. So everything starts to slow down. That's why we really have to focus on getting the proper amount of protein in our diet. I say we need to prioritize our protein because we no longer have hormones to rely on to support the growth of our muscle. We have to rely on all of those 9 essential amino acids that are crucial in turning on what we call muscle protein synthesis, which helps our muscle grow. And then we want to incorporate some form of strength training into our program where we can build that muscle tissue that, you know, helps pull up that glucose. It is our biggest glucose disposal. It takes up 80% of our glucose and helps us ward off high insulin levels. We want to keep that insulin down. We want to keep it sensitive. And maintaining good lean muscle tissue and putting strength training into your program is going to help you hugely as you age. Not only is it going to do that, it's going to do so many other things. It's going to make you feel better. You're going to move better. You're just going to live a much better, healthier life. So I can't
I've got
stress.
some, hold on, because I've got some comments and some questions. People ask, can you be more specific when you talk about this chocolate? Because, you know, over here we have something called cocoa. And I think because I lived in the West, I came to know that there's chocolate that's not really good for you, like some of these just normal candy, that's candy. Then there's the chocolate, which is a little bit more expensive here, like it's like maybe 700 bob, which is the equivalent of maybe $5 or $7, 7 Canadian dollars.
Yeah.
And then if you read the label, you'll see it's either milk chocolate, and at the back it'll tell you how much of chocolate is actually in it, because a lot of chocolate is sugar.
That's
so you're trying to get to the chocolate, because you can get a chocolate bar that's 100% chocolate, and it's very good for you, but it doesn't taste nice. It's not as nice as the milk one that they've put lots of it's bitter.
That's right.
I think that's what a lot of that's what we're probably doing more education on this side, because it's a new thing to actually take in chocolate to help you with your metabolic health, or you know, to help you with the fact that you don't have the hormones that you used to have. And then somebody else asked about eating ugali every day, once a day. So ugali is like it's actually made of corn. It's like cornmeal. So ugali is like a staple here, and we've started educating ourselves on the fact that perhaps we're eating too much ugali. So we just talk about, on your plate you should have a third ugali, a third vegetables, and a third protein. If you can reduce the ugali, increase the vegetable. So we talk about a high vegetable diet, moderate protein, low carbs. So we've been talking about carbs at Harriet Botanicals for the last 1 year. I mean, every time I put something in my mouth nowadays, I have to ask myself, carbs, what type of carbs, and why am I eating this? Even though I love chapati and I love mandazi, all these other nice treats we have here.
Oh my goodness, who doesn't?
You know,
it's a lovely thing. But yeah,
exactly.
You know, I have to say that as we age, we really need to prioritize protein. So we need to get more protein as we age, because, as I said, we no longer have hormones to rely on to keep our lean muscle tissue. So we need to actually get more levels of protein. And from the science behind what the research I've done, I have done a lot of research with a doctor named Dr. Donald Layman, and his associates. Now, he's a doctor of nutrition, and he studied protein for the last 42 years of his life. And he has done huge amounts, thousands of studies, where all of the studies have proven right, where it comes down to when we age, if we don't get at least, as women, 100 grams of protein in our diet a day, then we are going to suffer. We're going to have a metabolic crisis, and that is super important. And if
you can repeat his name, Dr. Glimman, you said, so I can write it down in the notes.
His name is Dr. Donald Layman.
Layman, okay.
Yeah, Dr. Donald.
I've written it down in the Dr. Donald Layman.
Yeah, and it's Layman.
Okay, so he says we need at least 100. I'm just trying to get these nuggets in the notes. Per day.
Per day. And the most important meals are your first meal of the day is the most important to get the most amount of protein. So you should be getting minimal 30 grams of protein in the morning, 30 to 50 grams in the morning. And your last meal is the most important too. Your middle meal is not so much. So your last meal should be at least 30 to 50 grams. If you're eating a third meal, which a lot of people do, then you can distribute 25 grams there. But we are looking at 100. And as I said, the first is the most important because overnight we are very catabolic, where we are breaking down amino acids from our muscles and supporting our organs from that. So we need to put that protein back to become anabolic, where we turn on the muscle protein synthesis, and that's the switch that turns on muscle growth. So it is super important. And this helps us as we age stay less frail. We don't want to be frail because this creates too many problems in our life.
So what happens to all these people who say be vegan? It's so difficult. I think when I lived in the UK, it was kind of easy to be vegan or to be this or to be that, because you can go to the supermarket and actually buy a vegan hamburger. Mm-hmm. So, choices are made for you.
Yeah.
Decisions. Sure. There are people who are putting together all these food things for you. You go to a supermarket and you say, this is the vegan section, and you get your food. Now, it's a little bit different. When I came back to Kenya, I thought, if I'm going to be vegan, all I'll eat is beans and rice, and I got so bored and fed up, and I just quit. And I became vegetarian. I became a pescatarian at some point. Now there's the whole keto. There's the new keto diet, where everybody's like, meat is the thing.
So that's why I always say. So let's talk a little bit about being a vegan. I never want to say you can't do it, because there are people out there who will never eat animal protein, and that's okay. But the most important thing is you need to be educated on being a vegan and meeting those 9 essential amino acids. The thing with plant protein is it's for plants. It protects the roots and the stems and the flowers. Animal protein protects muscles. So when we're getting plant protein, we have to eat a lot more of it, like so many more calories. We'd be eating too many calories to meet all of those 9 essential amino acids to turn on that muscle protein synthesis. That is the most important thing to remember. So I don't like to say you can't do it, but you need the education to do it. And and if someone was to be a vegan, I would like them to maybe get some education from someone who really knows what they're doing, who has the nutrition background as a vegan, because you'll probably end up having to supplement a lot being a vegan.
Okay. Well, you mentioned supplements. Tell us, what is resistance training? Because there are people who simply don't know what you mean.
So resistance training is anything from doing squats with your body weight, push-ups, pull-ups, to picking up dumbbells, weights. You guys know the weight, And
yes, pull-ups.
Yeah, so going into a gym and doing weights, that is another form of resistance training. Or those resistance bands, the stretchy bands, anything that is going to put force on that muscle, to break down that muscle, to let it build back up, to build muscle. We need to put some form of resistance on the muscle to incorporate more lean muscle tissue as we age. Super important. So,
Okay.
yeah, and it really depends on where you're starting. You know, to begin with, all you may need is your body weight to do squats, push-ups, and stuff like that to incorporate some form of stretch and resistance on that muscle. But it is really, really important for us to incorporate some form of resistance as we age, because as I said,
and this should be once a week, or how many times should we be doing resistance training in a week?
Well, if someone could give me 3 hours a week of some form of resistance training, that would be super, super beneficial. That would be, yeah, it would be a very, very good start. And if that's all you had, I'd say you're on the right track.
Okay, then can we talk about supplementation? Or was there anything else you say we could do outside of what you've just mentioned?
So we talked about food. We talked about, again, protein, which is super important. So I really, if I can encourage women, is really educate yourself on protein. It's super, super important as we age. And supplements, you know, if you're eating a whole food diet, that's awesome. But again, supplement wise, for if you're looking at supporting your estrogen or your progesterone, especially because if our levels of progesterone are up, our levels of estrogen are going to rise, right? So that's, like I was saying at the beginning, when our progesterone starts to drop, that's when our estrogen goes crazy. It goes down and fluctuates everywhere. But so yeah, there are things you can do. You can take vitamin C to help bring up the levels of progesterone a little bit. You can also, I'm just trying to think, for estrogen.
So vitamin C for progesterone, okay?
Yeah, vitamin C for progesterone. And then if we're looking at maintaining our stress hormones like the cortisol, I mean, we could talk for hours because there's just so many things. I don't want to get too out of the realm, but it is important for us as we go through menopause that we maintain our stress hormones. We keep
manage
them down,
stress.
keep our cortisol levels where they need to be, because we need cortisol to survive. It's like the #1 hormone. We can survive without our sex hormones, but we can't survive without cortisol. But we want to make sure it's not too high and it's not too low. So there are things you can do to support your cortisol, and that can be from practicing, again, some form of meditation, to doing prayer work, whatever form of meditation works for you. I know prayer is really great for me. It helps me calm myself. So any type of form of meditation helps lower our cortisol levels, because we want our sympathetic nervous system. We don't want to be in that fight or flight state
all the time.
Yeah.
Okay.
We want to be in a calmer state. So
yeah, I think people don't underestimate being in traffic, being in the supermarket, and having anxiety about either not having enough money or having to make too many decisions. I think as women, all these things that we do, we just take them for granted. The fact that we're always managing conflict, even at a low level, the fact that we're holding it all together for our families, at least in our heads, the fact that when our children are not doing well, or our husbands or our mom, we are the ones who carry our parents and our children and our significant other. We make the primary decisions in the home. At the same time, many of us are actually working. So we're out there engaging with the world. So I think a lot of women just don't know that they're always alert. They're always up. You know, they think this is normal.
Very good point. we take on a lot more stress. Women, they actually say women carry more stress than men, and we have to, you know, on top of everything we go through at this age, again, supporting our parents, we're doing a lot. We're in every direction. A lot of stress is coming our way, and we need to know how to manage that stress. And, you know, that really comes down to, as I said, some form of meditation that works for you, maintaining good sleep habits, right? Making sure you go to bed at the same time every night and get up at the same time every morning. that you get sunlight in your eye first thing in the morning, so you raise your cortisol levels to where they need to be. At the same time, we see the cortisol levels drop when we need them to drop in the evening, because we don't want to be, again, as I said, fight or flight all the time. We want to be able to bring that cortisol down to rest and digest. Food will play a big role in your cortisol also. Again, breath work is great. There are so many things, you know, eliminating alcohol out of your diet, all of these things. And again, as I said, ultra processed foods. But we do, as women, take on a lot, and women deal with a lot of trauma too. And that is a really important thing to remember, is we need to work through trauma if you haven't worked through trauma, because it will just be carried around with you if you don't deal with it. Trauma is a big thing right now, right? It's very much talked about. So
yeah, so I think we must emphasize the sleep, because there's people who don't sleep who think it's normal. There was a time in my life I wouldn't sleep for days, or just sleep 1 or 2 hours, and I thought I was really amazing. And I had no idea what I was doing to my body. I was just always active, energetic, energized, doing things. And I remember my mom used to say to me, "My God, you're like the Energizer Bunny. You have so much energy." And it's only recently now that, because of perimenopause, my sleep is interrupted. I'm noticing this can't be normal. I can't be the only person who can stay days without sleep. So I think it's very important for us to actually actively seek sleep, which is something we as women, again, don't do, because we're busy looking after everybody else and making sure everybody's okay. And then we just like drop into bed or pick up a glass of wine or whatever it is that helps you wind down really fast, without knowing that you're having a huge negative impact on your body, on your brain. And this will impact what happens to you later on, you know, post-menopause. So I suppose that it's so important, again, just not to underestimate sleep alone. The fact that all the different things are happening when you're sleeping, your muscles, your metabolic health, everything happens. Yeah.
Everything is happening when we sleep. Your brain, you know, literally we have all of those, that the cerebral spinal fluid goes through our brain, and it shrinks all the neurons, and it flushes all of those bad things out of the neurons, and it creates, you know, it gets rid of all the garbage. That's what happens when we sleep. So if we're not sleeping, we are not protecting our brain. You know, in the United States alone, there is a death every hour from drowsy driving. It's more than alcohol and drugs combined, the death of drowsy driving.
And people don't know this.
Sleep is crucial. I think it really, between sleep and exercise, I think a lot of people will put sleep first, but exercise is right there. Those are the two most important things that you can do to create a good health span and literally create better longevity. It is so very, very important. Yeah, sleep, like we were saying, it repairs everything that's going on in our body, keeps us clear.
So I want to just reiterate what you just said. Somebody said, yes, sleep hygiene. And yes, as I think many people have never heard this, that the spinal fluid goes into your brain when you're sleeping and flushes out all these toxins.
Yeah,
and then your body functions better. The cerebral spinal fluid.
Yeah.
So I know it's a bit technical, but it's something that we just must say, so that you can, every time I heard you say this, actually, when I was listening to the module you've done on sleep.
Yeah.
And I'm telling you now, whenever I do not sleep, I just think about that cerebral spinal fluid locked somewhere over here, not flushing out, not protecting my brain. And I just say to myself, Harriet, you must sleep. Sleep in. Even if you usually wake up at 5 in the morning, or you wake up at 6 a.m. and you're out and you're like buzzed, sleep in until 8. Nobody is going to die because you're 5 minutes late to work. You know? Nothing's going to change. You're 10 minutes late. You know, you had to get your sleep in.
Exactly. As I said to you, I'm up every morning at 3:25 a.m.
Three.
my time.
Yes.
Yes. And I
Okay.
go to bed. I don't have a life. I go to bed around 7 to 7:30 at night to make sure I
Okay.
get at least 7 to 9 hours of sleep a night because I'm not going
That's
to
wonderful
function
to
if I
know.
don't. Yeah, and
That's
if
wonderful to know.
yeah, so I can't stress it enough, especially as
Okay.
we age. I mean, at any age, but especially as we
Okay.
age. It's so
Because
important.
remember when we were younger, like, before puberty, when we just lived this carefree life of, we slept, it was okay. You don't think, you have really nothing to think about. Somebody else looks after,
Yeah,
somebody else puts food on the table. You just have
that's
to eat
right.
it. You
Yeah,
go to
we
school, you
have
don't
to
know
do
how you
that.
get there.
Mhm.
All these things are happening and you're just living in a bubble. I think that's what we need to aspire for. Even just for 7 hours, we say, forget, give to God, and like,
Yes.
I'm just going to sleep. God's going to look after everything for
Yeah, and
7 hours
He is.
at least.
Exactly. That's
Okay,
right. It's the truth, right? So we all have to remember what goes on when we sleep. It's all about repair. If we aren't sleeping, we're not
absolutely.
going to repair, and we're
Yeah.
going to have big, ugly consequences in the end if we don't do that.
Okay.
You really,
Okay, so,
they say, like, I think there is a decrease, like it takes off 7 years of your life if you don't do it. If you
ooh,
don't sleep. Yeah.
and,
So you
and
got to
we're
remember
all about
sleep.
aging gracefully. So we don't
Yes.
want to, don't
It
compromise your
makes us
sleep so
look
that you
better. It
start,
makes us
start.
eat less, right? If we're not sleeping enough,
Wow.
we go for more carbohydrates. We
Okay.
create more of the ghrelin and the leptin hormone that are hunger hormones, and we eat more because these hormones are going crazy. So yeah. So really
Okay.
important to
Okay.
know that sleep will make us gain weight. Lack of
Wow.
sleep. Yeah, lack of
So
sleep.
lack of sleep will make you gain weight. All the
Yeah.
people who say to me, how can I lose weight? And I say, sleep
Oh,
better,
sleep.
sleep more.
That's
More
right.
quality sleep
Yeah.
is
We
the
can talk a
first,
lot about
is the
sleep.
answer.
Exactly. It truly is.
Okay. So I'm just conscious of the time, and we only have one comment. Yvonne said people don't know about sleep hygiene because it's not taught early enough till it
Mhm.
creates a major problem, and I do agree. And we're just about to sign off because I know I said I'd keep you for about 40 minutes, and
Oh, that's
you
okay.
were
You're good.
actually on time. You were actually on time because I logged on 2 minutes before. So unless you have any other comment, or any last words, and then we can sign off, and then I can save this live and replay it.
Yeah. All I wanted to send the message to women out there who are going through perimenopause into menopause. Remember, it really depends on us. We have to be the CEOs of our health. We have to be in
Okay.
control. So it's super important for us to know it's not doom or gloom, but it's work. We have to put the work into it. Nutrition is number one, what we put in our mouths. It will help with, maintaining good phytoestrogens, keeping some good levels. There is help out there. I mean, I don't know what it's like for you guys when it comes to your medical system, but if you have some form of naturopathic care over there, they're always good people to reach out to. If I don't know if you can get your hormones tested, do you have the ability to do it?
We
Yeah.
now do.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, we've just started talking at Harriet Botanicals. We've now started saying to clients, do a hormone profile test, which we were not doing at the
Yes.
beginning.
Yeah.
And a large population of our clients really are trying to get pregnant or struggling with primary and secondary infertility. So we
Mm-hmm.
do the egg quality and the egg quantity taste.
Mm-hmm.
Now we're coming into the perimenopausal and the menopausal crowd. We're talking about the Dutch test coming
Yeah,
from the
I did the
functional
Dutch.
medicine
It's great.
practitioners.
Yeah.
So I've started myself. I am waiting to do the Dutch test actually
Mm-hmm.
with a friend of mine, a schoolmate, is actually a functional medicine practitioner based in Nyanyuki.
Awesome.
And so some of it is quite pricey, but I always
Yes.
say, even if you have to go to what we call a public hospital, it's
Yes. And
better to
get
go
just a
and get
basic
it
lab
done at a
test.
place,
Mm-hmm.
even if you think it's grungy, as in you go to
Mm-hmm.
a public, oh, it's not so nice, I'm not so
Kind of a
comfortable.
baseline. Yeah.
I am a big believer in really, going, finding a doctor, finding somebody who will do something,
Yes.
whether it's
Yes.
close to where you live, whether you have to make a phone call, whether you have to ask in a WhatsApp group. Because somebody here said, where can I do a hormone profile test? Well, you can do one at any hospital, any large hospital. And, you know, you just need to tell your doctor, I want to do all these tests.
Yes, you
Because
want to
he might
tell.
say, oh, we'll just test this. You know, you have to
You
take
need to,
control.
yeah. So
Yes,
it's really
you have to take
important.
control.
Take control. Get a baseline of your hormones. And, you know, honestly, this is what I would list. I would list, you want your fasting insulin taken. That is super important. So you want to know what your glucose levels are, so your A1C. You want to know, again, all of your sex hormones, all of your stress hormones. You want to know all of that. That is important.
Okay.
You want to know where things are, because when we know where things are, we know how to treat things better. But if we can keep our bodies moving, stay active. Staying active, movement is medicine, just like food is medicine, as long as we're putting the right food in our body. Super important. Again, getting good sleep hygiene, making sure we're taking all of these steps are going to help our hormones thrive on every level. And again, if it's necessary to go on on a bioidentical hormone treatment, I'm going to tell you, it's a wonderful thing. And I have just been back on hormone replacement for the last probably 9 months. I was on a bioidentical when I was going through menopause, when I was perimenopause, and it was very helpful. Then I went off, but I have literally no estrogen. And the research we've done, it's very safe for me to be on. And if I can be on it for the rest of my life, I will. You know, as long as it's safe, then, and it matches my estrogens, that makes me happy. It just makes me
So
feel better.
I want to repeat the things that you said, because somebody asked about what are we testing when we say you're going to be testing fasting insulin. I've written it there.
Yeah.
A1C,
Your
sex
A1C.
hormones, yes, and stress hormones.
Yeah.
And somebody else asked, what's the name of the visit? I said, Carrie Light. And you can actually friend her and get more information about Carrie's work. I am actually on her program and I got completely fascinated. You know, I wake up you know, it's so funny. I wake up and I'm like, okay, what am I supposed to be doing today? What did Carrie say? And I know you're 14 hours behind me. So it's
I'm
very
11
interesting.
hours behind you. 11 hours behind you.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you can find out more. And then somebody asked when is the next live and said, thank you very much for this. The next live is probably in 2 weeks. We usually do them on a Thursday at 5. And we want to do other hormones as well. We want to do more on metabolic health. We just want to keep talking to each other.
Yeah.
And you spoke about hormonal replacement therapy, HRT. You need to Google, and there's doctors right here in Kenya doing that. You spoke about bioidentical hormonal treatment. I don't think we have this here. I haven't found it. I asked another practitioner the same, and I think it's something that maybe we can explore if you can travel or you have friends who have traveled. And somebody commented, Arorwet and Mosipchot helped my perimenopause. These are the products that we have at Harriet Botanicals, and our audience is very aware of these particular two products. Arorwet to regulate your hormones, Mosipchot to jumpstart your thyroid for thyroid help, and Mosipchot has black cohosh, which is actually very good for perimenopause.
That's
so
another thing. Sorry, Harriet, don't want to interfere, but
that's fine.
Thyroid. Get your thyroid tested. It's huge, because when we start losing estrogen, our immune system goes off, and our thyroid is a big part of our immune system. So make sure you get that thyroid tested too, to make sure that you're producing the proper amount of T3s and getting.
Okay, so immune system for T3. I'm just writing this all down for people who want to take notes.
Yeah, and I don't know of all of, when you ask for thyroid testing, you need to be thorough. You want everything tested on the thyroid.
You're breaking
everything.
Oh, I think you're back.
Yeah. Am I back?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, so test everything on the thyroid, because there are only specific things that some doctors will test. Get everything on the thyroid to be tested.
I think there's T2, T3, and T4. Something like that.
Yeah. And there's a lot more too. I wish I had written that down, but like, it's so important, as the most important hormones to recognize as we age is our estrogen, our insulin, our cortisol, and our thyroid. Okay, those are super, super important.
So there's 4: estrogen, insulin, I'm just typing them,
cortisol, and your thyroid. Because as we go through menopause, women see way more autoimmune disorders than men, way more.
Okay. Okay, wonderful. I think we're done. So we can just close out. But thank you so much, Carrie. I mean, you've been amazing. I love listening to you myself.
I hope that I answered your questions.
I think you did, because I mean, we've not had a lot of questions, more comments than anything else. So awesome. I think we've actually covered a lot. We've covered nutrition, we've covered strength training and resistance training. We've covered what's happening in your brain, what's happening in your heart, what's happening in your skin, what's happening with your bones.
Everything.
And the fact that you need muscle.
We could talk a lot about estrogen, believe me. It's a big topic because it does so many roles in the body, right? So remember, it's a good thing.
It is, yes.
It really is. We love estrogen.
We do. It's gold. Estrogen is gold.
It's gold.
Okay, so let me release you. Thank you so much.
Okay.
I want to just close the live. Thanks, everybody. Wonderful.
Thank you. Harriet, you're awesome. Thank you so much for having me. You have a wonderful day. Okay?
You too. Okay, bye-bye.
I'll see you on the line.
Wonderful, wonderful.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye. Yes, Gmail, yes, DM, and we can give you the information about our US distributor or how we can get the product to you. So let me end this live.